Good morning. I hope everyone can hear me. Yes, I'm the Director of Digital Architecture at IAG. I've been with IAG for around 9 years. A lot of people say, oh, gee, are you ready to move? Have you been there too long? And the nice thing about IAG, and I'll get into a little bit more about IAG shortly, is that there's so many opportunities and so much transformation going on that it stays very interesting, and there's a lot of opportunities for both myself and others in my team. My team is actually based in both Melbourne and Sydney, and we also work very closely with our colleagues in New Zealand. And I originally came from a technical background before joining IAG, and prior to that I was working with KPMG in a global role for about 14 years. So I tend to stay at places, and I think IAG is one of those great places to work. So I'll get into the presentation, and today's really talking about our digital transformation that's underway. And towards the end, I'll get into how we're using New Relic. So the title of I guess today's presentation is really about that transformation to digital. For those, I guess, who don't know a lot about IAG, most people wouldn't really know who we are. But in actual fact, you might know us as NRMA Insurance, RACV Insurance, CGU Insurance, Coles Insurance, WFI Insurance, State Insurance, it just goes on. So we are we are, I think, the largest insurer in Asia Pacific, sorry, not Asia Pacific, but Australia and New Zealand. We have had further joint venture entities in Asia that we are sort of pulling back from a little bit to get the most out of our scale in this region. As the slide sort of says, we cover both direct and intermediated insurance, so pretty much whether it's insuring this building, whether it's insuring your home, your caravan, your motorcycle, your travel, we pretty much cover everything. And in a commercial sense, we also do workers' compensation insurance outside of places like New South Wales. So it's a very, very diverse business. I sometimes describe it, perhaps unfairly, as a bit of a hoarder's garage of different companies that have come together along with all the different systems that entails. For instance, IAG has a big part of it is the New Zealand operations, which have for a long time run very, very autonomously. They've got their own technology stacks. So we're bringing that organisation together under sort of one group umbrella, and that is IAG. As the slide says, we talk about the largest purchaser of reinsurance. Now, for those who don't know, that's effectively insurance for insurers. So when we have a major event like a Christchurch earthquake, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment, or a major Sydney hailstorm, which might be topical for people here in the audience, and I hope those of you here had a good experience if you dealt with IAG as part of that. But we also, because of the fact that we play such a vital role in rebuilding communities and rebuilding people's lives after a major event, we end up being one of the biggest purchasers of white goods and to restore people's, I guess, lives after the events. And that's what the promise of insurance is all about. I spent a lot of my time at IAG in the initial years working in the claims space, which was really good because you often don't work at a place where you're sort of really connected to the customer experience. But with claims, you're very much at the coalface. It's where the promise that you all would buy in terms of being able to get back on your feet comes to life, and that's the essence of why we all have insurance cover. So if we don't nail claims, then that sort of fundamentally erodes the proposition. So I have that background, and it's sort of when I was working in that space, it actually you feel like you're making a difference. It sounds a bit trite, but you can actually sort of see the change, you see the interactions with customers. And I guess our core purpose is very much making your world a safer place. We're quite genuine about that. It sort of serves as a way of, I guess, centering what we do and guiding the work that we proceed with. I'll move on. So we're obviously a very large and established organisation with a lot of history, a lot of regulatory oversight, like perhaps many other customers that are here today. We're APRA regulated, so there's a lot of oversight. Moving to the cloud is hard, but that's in train for us. and we're sort of joining that conga line procession to the cloud, but it takes time. So some of the other disruptive elements we've got, I guess, are, we have reasonably changing customer expectations about what good looks like, consumer-grade experiences, whether it be through Netflix or any other package where you can do everything on your mobile. That is the new normal, and we are scrambling in a way to catch up with that, but we've also done some great work, I think, and I'll cover some of that today. We also face some disruption from the mega players like Apple and Google and also Amazon, who can come in and really disrupt the market. Even with all the barriers to entry, they've got the scale that we'll probably never have. I guess there are some lower cost players in the market that we have ceded some ground to, but the overall service proposition from IAG is a very, very well-rounded and very well packaged offering. But we still will have that disruption. So in terms of what digital means at IAG, I sit in the digital function. It's about 400 odd people. That forms part of a core part of a broader organisation called Customer Labs that includes such areas as marketing and innovation, a venture fund, data analytics, and customer futures or customer strategy. So we're sort of quite a progressive part of IAG. There is another technology area called Group Technology, which looks after all the core systems at IAG. And then there's the Australian and New Zealand businesses. But ultimately, as I've said down the bottom of the slide, we don't really want there to be a separate digital function ultimately. We just want the business to be digital. At the moment, it's a very analog business that is progressing towards digital, and I'm sure we're not alone in that. So we're really just trying to change the mindset, bring forward some customer value, and really build new businesses as well. Some of those are including businesses beyond insurance. So for an insurance company not to sell insurance is actually quite disruptive, because a lot of the core systems that we have only do insurance. So if we wanted to sell a solution that basically provides emergency assistance for your home that is not an insurance product, well, how do we do the billing for that? Because the insurance platforms only do billing for insurance. How do we do the customer identity piece that we need? So there's a range of things that we need to transform and add capability. But and we are seeing that the business is transforming to the point where we've got multiple arms. So there's the general insurance business that I've talked about quite a lot already. We're also looking at adjacent businesses such as our motor and home repair services businesses that we're spinning up, and also brand new businesses that are quite different, where you're talking about mobility as a service. We recently made an acquisition, got a majority stake in a platform known as Carbar, which is a subscription-based vehicle ownership platform, which is very different and very progressive. So we will make investments in startups and fintechs, but also grow our own internally. So it's quite a diverse business, and I'll keep moving, otherwise I'll run out of time. So we're really about, I guess, trying to transform a very traditional model. So, we for a long time have we've developed insurance products that have been underwritten, and there's reinsurance cover for that, and we've sold them into the market to say, well, here's our home product, here's our motor product, here's our workers' compensation product. So rather, we are now looking to transform the way we design the products, taking a customer-centric lens, being customer-obsessed, rather than being a very product-centric, here it is, take it or leave it sort of paradigm. So that's quite a cultural change for IAG, but a welcome one. And I don't imagine that what we're undergoing is unique to IAG either. So it's very big focus on perhaps starting with the customer experience and really working back from there, as opposed to just saying, well, we're just going to keep operating, because we can't. We're in the midst of disruption. So the way we're going about that is taking a journey-led approach. We worked with the likes of McKinsey and others to basically look at how might we work differently, what ways of working do we need to adopt, and some similar themes to what we just heard with the Services New South Wales presentation, where we're moving away as much as we can from traditional waterfall projects and traditional projects that start and finish and then everyone gets upset because they didn't get the scope that they wanted, to more continuous cross-functional streams of work known as journeys, that where we will deliver an MVP and then we'll iterate on that. There'll be, there might be 10 releases through the year where we are basically prioritising the greatest value for the customer or the operational benefit as we progress, and it's an ongoing thing. So it's not a project that starts and finishes. So it's a very different paradigm. And I think a welcome change for IAG, because we work directly hand in glove with the business. It's a cross-functional team. We'll have people from data, analytics, digital, the business, and we engage quite heavily in service design, human-centred design, customer testing, directly interviewing customers. As an architect, it's only in the last couple of years that I have been doing that, and IAG has helped, I guess, me grow personally. But a lot of other architects I've worked with have never been close to a customer, right? I sort of asked some people, when was the last time you sat in a customer interview or jacked in on a call at a call centre? And a lot of us, I think, in technology, we get caught up in what we do, but we're probably too far away from the customer. And I think there's a lot to be gained in actually trying to get as close as you can. So we're sort of looking at reimagining our each of the customer journeys. We have started with our claims journeys, so we call them the recover journey, and I'll get into the value chain that we have. So this is our, I guess, our overview from our sort of end-to-end process. So you've got the, we're trying to, I guess, do the direct marketing and understand our customer base or our prospects. Customers also go through a realise and explore and decide phase where they realise, I've bought a new car, I need insurance, or I've bought a new house, or I've sold my car and I'm getting another one. So there's various stages that each of these will be journeys, right? There is also I guess, a process around renewal of your policies, and we'll tackle each of these, and we expect that over time, and it doesn't cover them all here, but we expect that there'll be up to 20 journeys that we will progressively roll through, and there's quite a significant business benefit that sits behind each of those. That's where McKinsey, they're certainly not cheap to work with, but they do really great work, and they were very helpful in terms of teasing out where those business benefits are and where to focus our energies, whilst we were tackling all the other digital transformation elements. And we're only sort of a couple of years into this journey of tackling journeys, but we expect that this is the new way of things at IAG. That's our intent. So the recover journey I talked about earlier is at the very end, so that's the moment that matters, right? That's the claim, right? So rather than just selling you insurance through a digital property that we have, whether it be NRMA or CGU or Coles, and then making you phone us up and do everything analog on the phone, we're really trying to empower customers so that you can do everything yourselves, right? And when you do need to call us, it's for probably those more complex and high-value transactions that we can add the most value. And certainly in a big, impactful event like a major car crash or something, people need to speak to people. You can't always do that exclusively in digital, but we are looking to, I guess, digitise our business to such an extent and also empower our customers so that we find that most people only call because they can't get it done themselves online. So that is very much the driver. It's not just because everyone else is doing it. It's just like, well, we've been very reliant on a contact centre, analogue sort of call us paradigm for far too long, and we've made customers take that path because that's what we knew and that's what we scaled. To give you a sense of the Sydney hailstorm event and what it meant for IAG, we would normally, in a peak event like that, which is sort of out of our hands, it's in the hands of the gods, I guess, with weather, I think we process normally about 4 or 5 times normal claims volumes. So it's quite a spike. So we really have to have a good handle on the underlying systems, both the contact centre technologies, but also our digital presence as well. So that's sort of where New Relic does come into play. So the real, I guess the real focus with customer journeys is to have that customer centricity. There's a whole sort of section of our floor over at Darling Park that's dedicated to the journey teams. There is a sort of there's often a data and insights piece. There's a business value sort of calculation piece. There's a lot of value engineering around it, and then there's a fair degree of ideation, the sort of double diamond approach where we sort of go broad and come up with lots of ideas, and we then work through the feasibility and desirability sides of things. And we're really focused on doing, rather than doing whatever the hippo in the room said we should do, we actually focus on the most valuable, the most impactful item that's based on data. We really want to be a data-driven organisation where we're doing the right things rather than whatever someone saw in an aircraft magazine or they heard about at a barbecue. So what's really going to move the needle for our customers? So that's our focus, and we're doing this work across both Australia and New Zealand, which has its own challenges in terms of logistics, but we're beginning to see quite a lot of scale from the work that we've done here in Australia, where we can actually scale that into New Zealand, where there may not be as big a digital footprint, but we can actually get some benefit from doing things once. And I'll get to some of this a bit later. We call it doing it purple, because that's the colour of the IAG brand. So we're really, I'll move through this fairly quickly, but we're really trying to focus on having those cross-functional teams that are persistent, that don't just start and finish and then a project wraps up and then everyone sort of feels like they missed out because scope got cut. And that's at least my lived experience with traditional projects. And I think so far I haven't seen really a downside to the more cross-functional teams. You're closer to the business, you're closer to the customers, and there's more iterative development, and people get a real sense of traction as opposed to waiting 12 months for something to pop out the end and it's not quite what they wanted. So an example of us designing for purple, this is the claims lodgement sort of single-page app that we've got regarding motor vehicles. So you can see that there's lots of different brands there. So we've got, Coles at the top, AMI in New Zealand, RACV, NRMA, SGIO, SGIC, and there's others that are not even listed there. I ran out of space, but essentially the same fundamental code base, and we're scaling. And we have feature and toggle switches within these capabilities such that we can differentiate for different customer value propositions and CVPs, right? So not every brand gets the same experience, but the core base is the same, and that gives us a huge amount of scale, because fundamentally insurance is insurance. Right? It's not radically different insurance for Coles versus NRMA, but there might be different options and capabilities that are afforded to customers based on that proposition. Obviously, a lot of people, and I include myself in this, do much of their life admin and getting stuff done on their phone. Traditionally, we haven't done a huge amount with mobile devices. We have an NRMA mobile app, but we don't have them necessarily across all our other brands. But we expect that we will also be progressing a more purple mobile app so that we can get more scale across the broader IAG. In the context of the recover journey, one thing that I always found strange is that, say you had a car accident historically with IAG, maybe it was with NRMA or CGU or Coles, there'd be a lot of phone tag trying to work out, well, where's that car repair up to? And there'd sort of be a handoff between us and the repairer, and then the repairer would variously contact you or not, the smash repairer, and sometimes they would do a great job, sometimes they wouldn't, but of course it's our brand that's sort of in the spotlight if it's not a great experience. So we're really trying to have much greater control over that end-to-end customer experience, because it's our reputation at stake, irrespective of which repairer it goes to, and that also applies to the property repair space as well. So not suggesting that it's always been bad or that it can also be good, but we also need to have a complete record of the customer interaction such that when you call, we know what SMSs have been sent, we know what updates you've been given, as opposed to there being these sort of blackouts and these silos of information. So we're trying to bring all that together. So everything that we send out through our journey sort of platform is captured such that it turns up in a system that we know as Claim Center. So it's the underlying claims platform. So it's a complete record of the customer interaction. So there's nothing falling through the cracks, and there's no sort of phone tag. And that's a major issue today, where there's lots of expensive phone calls for both customers and for us, where people just trying to chase each other and trying to work out when that car will be fixed. One other piece that's probably not always well understood is that when you crash your car, sometimes, whilst you can order a book or something on Amazon and it turns up a couple of days later, sometimes car parts can take up to 6 to 8 weeks to turn up. So the expectation management around that with repairers can be quite tricky because a lot of them don't carry lots and lots of parts on hand. So we've got to do a much better job, and that was one of the key facets of our recover journey, where we were really trying to solve this communication blackout piece, but also better manage customer expectations. Some of the other work we've done is around, if you go through this lodgement process and most of that car is red, if you click on the areas that have been impacted and some of the other questions that you answer, we can probably get a pretty clear sense that it might actually be a total loss. And a total loss scenario is quite impactful for a customer because essentially your car gets written off in that situation. You may not be able to drive it home from the assessment centre. So we want to get ahead of that and not have there be those sort of surprises, because it's not cost effective to repair that vehicle, right? So we're applying machine learning and AI to those sorts of scenarios so that we can actually deliver a much, much richer experience for customers and actually get ahead of some of those bad experiences that can be quite impactful. So when I talk about delivering the way we do in digital in a purple fashion, we're really talking about having far less bespoke work going on. Previously, before the Journey program, pretty much everything was bespoke to a particular brand. Some brands had more impetus than others in terms of getting things done. Some brands would have no digital capabilities at all. So we basically sort of draw up a stack, if you like, and make sure we sort of consistently get some scale in that way. So not only harmonised and modular products, but also we have a design system that we know internally as Chroma. So it's a whole UX palette of components that we can pull together that are accessible, so we can instantly provide a better result for all our customers, not just those that are able to easily read. And we can bake all that into a reusable component or a component library and get scale. And that supports that branding that you saw, but also for other partner brands that I haven't listed here. We do a lot of work for credit unions, banks, health funds, where they will white label our products. An example might be home and motor insurance that you might buy through a health fund. So we have several other components there. I won't spend too long on them, but we are progressing a lot of API development, but also we'll need to progress the decomposing of our various monolithic applications into microservices as well. So we have a mix of both on-prem and cloud. We've got quite an established set of immutable infrastructure that we have on-prem, and we are increasingly moving our workloads to the cloud. We recently undertook some work with Amazon. It was called a 30 in 50 exercise. So that's where we take 30 workloads, try and move them to Amazon in 50 days. So it's really very much it's probably worth considering if you're also an Amazon prospect or customer to really stress test your own business in terms of your readiness to move to the cloud. So it's a bit of a hot housing exercise. And frankly, I think we got some 24 or 26 of the 30 done, and that was quite an effort. Not all of those workloads are really big material core system workloads. There's a lot more effort required around those due to the APRA regulation, but we're sort of positioning ourselves to head in that direction. But we want to do so in such a way that we don't end up with bill shock with respect to Amazon, and make sure we're doing the right things around our customer data as part of that. So I'll get into some of the finer details. We are, from a digital standpoint, we're principally a React shop. We opted to use those technologies because they're largely commodity in the market. There had been some traction with Angular in parts of our organisation, but in terms of a presentation layer, React has sort of nailed it for us. Obviously, we've got a few other components like Redux and Postgres in play. And this is a sort of common toolkit that we're using for most of our digital apps. And where something is a strategic asset that perhaps hasn't been built on this, it'll be progressively refactored onto this stack. I guess we're also investing in event-driven architecture as well. It's something that we're probably later than we should be too, where we've got Kafka in play, moving away from some of the more traditional approaches as well. One of the reasons why Kafka is important for us is that, as we move into more of an IoT setting with 5G in a few years' time, where it really gets some traction, we're just going to be deluged as an insurer with data that we can use and act on to say, looks like your fridge is sending us some weird signals. Perhaps it's time to proactively replace that fridge rather than actually causing an insurance claim. So sometimes we will proactively do an assurance exercise with customers to prevent a major claim. A more topical example is most people don't know that most of our really expensive water claims come from the flexible hoses under your sinks that after a few years just explode and give up, and then there's water everywhere and it becomes very, very expensive. So we have looked at programs where we will proactively engage customers to change out those hoses so that we can avoid claims. So that might be where we partner with, say, Airtasker or another organisation that can work with our customers to proactively avoid a claim, because we should ultimately try and avoid those claims in the first place. We are heavily invested with AWS, but also we have a presence with Azure as well, with our New Zealand colleagues that isn't perhaps represented there. In terms of our DevSecOps sort of stack, obviously New Relic is part and parcel of that. We are using Splunk as well, and there's a number of familiar names on that slide, I guess, for many of you in the audience. We expect that there are some things that we will have that the organisation requires. Our enterprise sort of ITSM or service management platform is ServiceNow. And that has lots of advantages, and we need a central enterprise capability, but we also expect that for DevOps teams we might partner with both New Relic, we're a Slack-based organisation, at least within digital, and Customer Labs, and there's a lot of synergies between the likes of New Relic and Slack, but also the likes of PagerDuty, who I think are exhibiting here. So we will need to make sure that we work well with the likes of ServiceNow from an end-to-end integration standpoint, because if we have a major event and it doesn't turn up in ServiceNow, then it's a problem. But we expect that because of the platform choices we've made and the tooling choices we've made, all those things are possible. I guess a bit of history around New Relic at IAG. I think someone put it on their credit card, it went viral. It's probably not an unfamiliar theme here in this audience. And we, a couple of years ago, we were going through a bit of a purge of our technology landscape, and some people who didn't really understand what New Relic provided sought to exercise it or excise it from our environment, and my team had to sort of step in and actually sort of course correct that activity, and now we expect that New Relic will have a much broader role as we transform and simplify our systems landscape. We will need those more progressive capabilities that New Relic provides. So it's sort of had a bit of an interesting path at IAG, and mostly it's based on just a lack of awareness of what the rich capabilities are. So we hope we don't have to intercede ever again, but sometimes that's what you need to do in terms of getting the right outcome. So I think I've talked about it being a core piece of our framework. It is integrated with ServiceNow, as I said. We will be looking to get those synergies with the likes of PagerDuty or OpsGenie and those sorts of tools. We need to settle on one, but as we go through our sort of systems transformation, we're going to have to need these same sort of capabilities across our core systems landscape as well, which is really the iceberg under the water for IAG from a tech standpoint. So that's our perspective on our digital transformation. I think the customer journey piece is really valuable. I'd certainly encourage you to learn more about that. We've done a lot to foster the right digital culture at IAG. It takes time. We do hackathons. We work with the likes of eBay and Gumtree and others to do those hackathons. We've even done one with New Relic, which has been amazing. So, the key, I guess, is working with the right partners. And that's been our experience so far with New Relic. So that's it for me. Thank you.